Folks, I'm going to speak about a buyer who found themselves in a worst case scenario. Then I'll get into the latest home prices and insights for the city of Toronto for a week ending August the 6th, 2025. If you want to speak directly with me about your real estate situation, selling, buying, it's really simple. Below this video in the description is a link to my calendar. Click on that, book a time that's convenient for you, and we'll talk about whatever's on your mind. We've helped quite a few sellers this year sell their properties. And in most cases, closing date comes and it goes and it's uneventful. No drama, which maybe sounds boring to you, but that's exactly what we want on closing date. We want everything to work out. The buyer wants that, the seller wants that, the lawyers want that, the realtors, everybody just wants a smooth closing date. Given this economy, this market, sometimes it doesn't go so smooth. And on two situations this year, where we're representing the seller, involved where the buyer on closing day at the last minute is not able to close and is asked for an extension on closing date. In the first scenario, the buyer says, hey, listen, I need an extra week to close. I was all set, something happened, and now I need an extra week. I can't get my financing in order. I need a week. Now, in that situation, our seller had already moved out of their house, had purchased and moved into their new house. So their house was sitting vacant for a few days before closing. They had a very small mortgage on that house. And our sellers who were already comfortable in their new home are looking at the scenario and looking at their options. Now, they could choose to say, no, we're not granting the extension. If you don't close, you're going to be in breach. They could do that, but I think it's going to be a bit unreasonable that they do that. And if later there was to be a court case, the judge would say, why didn't you just grant the extension for a week? So that's a real life thing that can happen. So the sellers are looking at the situation and thinking, okay, if they look at all their carrying costs for another week and were to charge the buyer for this extension, those carrying costs, then yeah, sure, why not? We'll grant another week. And through the different calculations of carrying mortgage and interest and legal fees to do all this, our clients figured in conjunction and conversation with their lawyer that it was going to be $2,000 to extend, and that's what the buyer should pay. The buyer pays $2,000 in fees, then our seller would grant the extension. And the buyer happily said, sure, no problem, thank you. And that's what happened. So $2,000 was paid directly to the sellers. To $2,000, it's important to understand, it doesn't come off the purchase price. Like the $2,000 is in addition to whatever the purchase price was. That money goes directly to the sellers. But the buyer needed a 2-week extension. The alternative of being found in breach is way worse. Buyer was happy to pay it. A week passed, closing date happened. Everybody moves on, everybody's happy. The second buyer, the scenario I'm going to speak about now, that buyer was not as lucky. Closing date, the buyer says, I need a 2-week extension. My finances are not quite there. I need a bit more time. Well, our seller in that situation actually was moving into the home they purchased on the same day of closing, and they needed the proceeds from their sale in order to close on a home they purchased. And that home they purchased, those sellers needed the sale of their home to purchase their next home. You understand what's happening here? There was a chain reaction. Our home needed to sell in order for our clients, the sellers, to buy. But the home they bought, those sellers were in the same scenario. They needed the sale of their home. So they needed our client, my client, to close in order for them to make their purchase complete. So there were 3 properties involved, and everything stemmed from this first buyer actually closing. And he asked for a 2-week extension. And after everything was said and done, and the chain reaction, everybody else asked for an extension, and so forth, the penalty paid directly to the individual sellers amounted to a little bit over $20,000. So here you are. Here's this buyer that was not so on top of things and not taking closing dates so serious and just thought, what's the big deal? You don't grant me, then sue me. Well, to grant that extension, actual provable expenses, because the buyer's lawyer is going to ask, what are you talking about, $20,000? And you produce the actual expenses involved, it's like, ooh, that's a lot of money. And again, this is not reducing the purchase price. This is not an additional deposit. This is straight fines or penalties or paying the expense that other people are going to incur because you are extending the closing date. And that buyer reluctantly paid it because the alternative was way worse. You don't close, you're vulnerable. You open yourself up as a buyer to be sued. And because of the chain reaction, I mean, it could get very, very complicated and very, very costly. So the buyer ended up paying the $20,000, and in 2 weeks it actually did close, and everybody moved on to do what they were doing. If I could leave you with this, if you're a buyer, make sure for real you've dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's, that your financing is absolutely in place. And understand, if you find yourself in a position where you need to ask the seller, you need their permission to change the agreement, like the closing date, you don't know what the seller has actually planned for that closing date or to happen after that closing date. You really put yourself in a vulnerable position and kind of at the mercy of what the seller is going to ask for to grant you your extension. If you think this video can help somebody you know, please pass it along. And if you get value from what we're talking about, subscribe. Now, let's get into the numbers. Here we go, folks. City of Toronto real estate data. We do have the month end that just finished, the month of July. So I've got some month end data I'm going to speak about before we get into our weekly breakdown. We're going to start off with power of sales. Power of sales are up. The orange, that's this year. The blue, that's same month a year ago. So for month ending July, there's 152 power of sales listed. And if we compare 2024 to 2025, January to July, well, power of sales are up 63%. But last year had a high power of sales. I know it's a little bit weird me having my hand here, so let me just get to it right away. Compared to last year, power of sales are up 63%. But if we go back a few years and we go, say, 2022, when we compare the same January to July, power of sales are up 577%. Power of sales are way up when we go back multiple years to when there were much fewer. But today, just looking back to last year, 63% increase is quite a bit. But we're comparing to last year that also had a high rate of power of sales. And we're higher this year. But if we go back to when power of sales were relatively relatively speaking, stable. Say 2022, 577% increase, January to July this year versus the same period in 2022. It's quite a bit. Let's look at other data here. So this is just for the city of Toronto, just for detached properties. For the month of July, 675 detached properties were sold across the city of Toronto. And we look back at the previous July, 2024, 2023, 2022, looks like sales have been increasing. Now, I'm not necessarily looking at every month in between because sales go up and down, but just July. This July, we've sold more properties than going back as far as July 2022. Fewer than what was sold in 2021. So sales have been increasing from 2022 onward every July. And if we look at average sold price, it's kind of the opposite. If we go back to, say, 2021, average sold price has been decreasing. We're currently sitting at $1,573,000 for the average sold price of a detached property in the city of Toronto for the month of July. Well, it's 4.6% lower than what the price was last year, July. It's 4.1% lower than 2023 prices. We're a little bit higher than where they were in 2022, and that's where the start of the downward trend started, with interest rates starting to climb. But if we go back to 2021, we are 3.7% lower. If we go back a bit further and we compare to 2019, the current price is actually 28% higher than where prices were in 2019, just to give you some perspective there. So here we go. Here's what we're looking at today, what we're really focused on. Detached semis and towns. I've got condo average prices on the board here. It's just for reference. We're not going to be talking about condos in this show. That's tomorrow's show. But when we're looking at detached semis and towns and condos, average prices overall for all these home types seems to be trending down now for a while. Here we go. Detached properties for week ending August the 6th. It was a long weekend, folks, and I say that with a bit of smirk on my face because every time I bring up long weekends and, sales are often taking a bit of a dip. It happens every single long weekend, and yet every time I bring it up, some people are like, oh, he's blaming it on a long weekend. It is just a factor to consider. So it was a long weekend, but week ending August the 6th, 88 detached properties were sold. 16 of those sold at $2 million or more. Long weekend or not, average sales have been trending down. July, August, sales seem to, most years, trend down at this time of year. Average sold price is $1,450,000. That's for week ending August the 6th. And average sold price for months now has been trending down. Compared to last year for the same week, $1,450,000 is 9% lower. The median price of $1,170,000 is 11% lower. The dotted line, that's a 4-week moving average. Both average price and median price have been trending down for a while now. I've got 3 months on the board here. 88 were sold, 23 of those, so 26% sold at list price or more. 248 were listed. Now, listings are trending down. Active listings are trending down. It's not accurate to say, oh, if active listings are trending down, that means there's fewer available for sale. That means we're going to have a shortage. It doesn't mean that necessarily. There could be fewer buyers also. So that's why I kind of produced a percentage. And out of all the available properties for sale, even though there's fewer, the percentage of that's actually being sold is still quite low. Only 3.5% of all available detached properties available for sale actually sold. And months of inventory climbing. So even though active listings are fewer, sales are also low, which is bringing up months of inventory. We're now sitting at 6.7 months of inventory. But being a long weekend, it may not be a fully accurate months of inventory, and we'll see over the coming weeks how that adjusts. However, overall, months of inventory has been creeping up week after week after week. That's the whole city. If we break the city down into 9 different sections, well, let's look at it. If we kind of look here in Midtown, York Mills, Rosedale area, months of inventory is sitting at 13.4. It's over a year of months of inventory. We said the city average is out to 6.7, but right here in the middle, average sold price, it's over 3.6 million. 522 are available for sale, 522 detached properties, only 1.7% actually sold. High Park, Parkdale was only 3 sold, but there's 101 available listings, 7.8 months of inventory. Scarborough, when it comes to sales across the GTA, it doesn't matter whether you like the neighborhood or not. Scarborough is a powerhouse when it comes to volume of the city. 34 were sold. That's 39% of all sales sold across the city of Toronto, and 5.6% of all available properties for sale in Scarborough, just detached properties, actually sold. So 5.6%, it's a little bit on the higher side of percentage of sales. And months of inventory sitting at 4.1. Let's look at 3-bedroom detached prices. Sales are trending down. 40 of those were sold for week ending August 6th. Average sold price, it is up from the previous week, but overall trending down. And compared to the same week a year ago, average sold price of $1,222,000. I don't think I said it on the previous slide, but average sold price is 1,222. It's 2% higher than the same week a year ago. Let's look at 4 bedrooms. 33 4-bedroom detached properties were sold. Those sales kind of sort of are trending down, although the last few weeks they were a little bit more flat. Average sold price is $1,888,000. Average sold price overall is trending down. Compared to the same week a year ago, average sold price is down 8%. That's for 4-bedroom detached properties. And when we compare the two, the difference in average sold price is $666,000. It's a big difference in average sold price. Both are trending down. Months of inventory for 3 bedrooms sitting at 5.6 months of inventory. Months of inventory for the 4-bedroom properties is sitting at 6.8 months of inventory. Let's look at semi-detached properties. 37 were sold for week ending August the 6th. 5 sold at $2 million or more. Sales trending down. Average sold price is $1,225,000. It's a little bit tricky to figure out direction. For a while, average sold price was trending up. For the last few weeks, maybe a month or so, trending down. Let's see where it kind of eventually settles out at. But $1,225,000 is 6% higher for the same week a year ago. The median price of $1.1 million is no change from the same week a year ago. Months of inventory slowly climbing. It's still quite low at 3.2 months of inventory. When I say quite low, relatively speaking to where the detached market is and where the condo market is. There's townhouses. 13 townhouses were sold. Overall sales are trending down. Average sold price for townhouses, these are freehold townhouses. It's been trending down for a while now. We're currently sitting at $994,000. 994 is 4% lower than the same week a year ago. The median price of 951 is 1% higher. Both are trending down. That's average price and median price. Months of inventory trending up. We're now at 4.3 months of inventory. The 1 week here of 9, look, there's going to be messy weeks there where the data doesn't quite jive, but then things kind of tend to get to where they're supposed to be, or what's a bit more accurate of the current market. 4.3 is a bit more accurate of where the current market is, and you can see that it's slowly, months of inventory are trending upwards. Here's a quick summary. In most cases, you're going to experience a buyer's market or a balanced market. But in most cases, you're going to see a lot of properties available for sale, not a lot of buyers looking to buy these properties, which gives a little bit more control to those buyers who are actually looking to buy. And the sellers, they're finding themselves competing more with each other to attract the buyer. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome day.